Hello, everyone. It's Patricia Warby. This is Alchemy Therapies, my emotional audit, and a few other things. I'm a trauma therapist based in the south coast of the UK. And today I want to talk a little bit about the spiritual bypass. Now, this is something I talked about 3 years ago. I recorded a very short video on it. But it's time to re-record some of these ones because they were recorded on not to the standard that I'm aware of what I can do now. And so I've got a lot more to say as well because I've got a lot more experience, I guess, of working with this kind of thing. And in case you're not aware of what the spiritual bypass is, well, it was a term coined by Dr. Miles Neale. He is a psychotherapist based in the US and director, I believe, of the Contemplative Institute, which is a sort of Buddhist institute that combines, I guess, meditative practice with psychotherapy. And he was talking about the idea that the spiritual nature of the human can often be circumvented, if you like, or altered to make it a practice which avoids the messiness of being human, avoids those deep feelings. And so, in that sense, it's not a very positive outcome for most people because they end up in situations where spirituality is seen as separate from the human experience. It's almost elevated above the everyday life, and you're often led by people who don't engage in everyday life and certainly don't engage in their messiness, their own internal feelings. And so we're being led by people who perhaps don't have the requisite tools for dealing with what actually happens in real life situations. And now, why this comes about, I have observed over and over again, is that often people who end up going into places where spiritual practice is observed is they have childhood trauma and they are trying to find ways in which to help themselves deal with this. But if they end up in a practice which doesn't allow one to connect with your feelings, then all you're doing basically is connecting with higher level thinking, a sense of bypassing your actual feelings as a means of avoiding it, really. And it's a form of dissociation, and therefore not one which Dr. Neale encourages, and I certainly don't. I work with people to get into their bodies and actually feel their feelings and allow that to be how they transcend their past experience. And so it's really about getting down and dirty with the interior world that you have absorbed from your past and allowing yourself to be validated and witnessed and held in that awareness rather than elevating something or someone, whether it's God or some guru above you as all knowing, and thereby avoiding the need to engage with your past or with what's happened to you and the beliefs that have become entrenched from that experience. And as such, I think it does actually form a method of coercion when you are being led by people who don't have that experience and can't show you how. Then they are telling you to not engage with that and to see yourself as having a higher purpose. And thereby I think they're enabling control over you, because as soon as you get in touch with your body and your feelings, that's where empowerment lies, and that's where personal growth actually happens. It's not in necessarily having a strong spiritual belief, although I do want to make clear I think it's a wonderful thing, and certainly is very important to me, is the sense of healing is a spiritual act, and there is, if you like, a higher power or an intelligence in the body which connects with all that is. And I do believe that's part of the process when I engage with clients. So I'm not dismissing spirituality, but what I am saying is spiritual practices that engage with this spiritual bypass idea are not healthy. and can be coercive. And actually, they're a method of avoiding pain. Well, who wouldn't want to avoid things that were painful and things that reside in you still, and the shame that that engenders? And I've been reminded of that recently, not just in my own personal experience of relationships, which, after all, as Dr. Neale says, are the crucible for how we work through all this messy stuff. That the beliefs that we have only come up really when we're in relationship with someone else and we realize their worldview does not concur with ours. It's come up for me recently in my work practice, and having certain assumptions questioned, or my interpretation of what's going on really challenged. And it's very hard, because you come at any situation with the baggage of your past and with the beliefs and the worldview that you developed as a child. Now, if your childhood was much like mine, a fairly average childhood, but there were things in it where you were not met emotionally, where perhaps your parents weren't able to, didn't understand you, you felt like an outsider, this is still considered trauma. It's actually a form of developmental trauma, which is no lesser than the one-off traumas that many people think, like abuse or abandonment, which are very serious traumas. But here I'm talking more about the drip feed of not being got in your family, of perhaps having your emotions ignored or ridiculed. And what that creates in you is a kind of dissociative tendency to avoid your emotions, and a belief that you can transcend them with thinking, and you go much more into planning and trying to find control, executive control over your life, which may come in the form of perfectionism or judgmental beliefs about yourself or others, and a lack of trust. A lack of trust in the ability of other people to meet your needs, which of course causes havoc in interpersonal relationships. So if we see it as a means of avoiding pain, then obviously it's going to be very difficult for you to live a wholehearted and fully joyful life. And I think you must understand that where you've had trauma, it's a breach in trust, it's a breach of connection. And in order to get that back is going to take somebody that you could work with who trusts that you can resolve this, but it has to be done bodily, and that's how I work. And so be very aware that you cannot dismiss your feelings, you cannot dissociate from them forever. At some point in your life, usually around midlife, they will come welling up as symptoms in your body. And one of our human needs is to be met, is to be connected with. And if we didn't have that as an experience when we were young, it's very difficult for us to trust that in adult life. And so we have to value interpersonal connection, and we have to lean in to somebody who does get us and is willing perhaps to negotiate with us about what's important to us, so that the beliefs that we can carry forward are not those of a child, but one of an adult who is able to discern what they want and what they need. And so it's about getting raw and messy with your feelings, but in the presence of an attuned other. And that's what I do with people. So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to do another one next week to continue this theme on how emotions are part of your healing. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.